Center of Black Recreation and Culture Arts, Eddie speaking. I'm doing fine, Pastor. How you doing? Oh. Yes. Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for calling me back. I definitely glad you reached.
Okay. Okay, now can you hear me? Maria, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, Tim, what happened to Larry?
Just if you scroll down and look at there's a little arrow, click on that, it'll show more people. There's options of how many pictures you can see at the top of the pictures. You see it? One little bigger,
Well,
bigger,
all
bigger.
I'm looking at is myself now. So what did I do? Oh, there's Larry, and there's Robbie, there's Tim. So
Bobby.
it's 4 o'clock if we'd like to. Are we all here that are coming?
Laura's here too. Laura should be here. Okay, where am I buying here?
Here. Can you hear me, Robbie?
I hear you.
Okay.
There are a lot of them.
We have 4 members. Is that a quorum, or are we waiting for Ted Stackett?
We're also waiting for Laura Schoenberger. She was
Oh,
on.
Laura, yeah. Okay.
Laura was on as far as participants. She's in the listing.
There's Laura. She's coming on.
And she's
I see her name. I'm new at doing this, so bear with me.
Are you going to call the meeting to order, Linda, or am I going to call?
Yes, I was waiting for Laura.
Okay, I didn't know if I was doing it and then recusing myself.
Yeah, no, they said you were recusing. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that. I know that.
Yeah. So anyway, I'd like call the meeting to order. I guess we have. I don't see Laura's picture. I don't know whether she's here.
Well, she could have stopped the video, so her photo might not be there. That's her choice.
Okay, call the meeting to order. I'm waiting on Sunny to do the roll call. We're running around here crazy.
Here's Laura.
Laura. Okay. Hi, Laura.
I'm new at this too.
Yeah. Okay, calling the meeting to order. Sunny, are you ready for roll call? She's just a second.
Meeting's called to order. We will do roll call. You may not ask people to mute unless they're speaking. Mute their.
And just stay present. Roberta
Richard Stackpole. Elizabeth Van Rensburg. Linda Little Craybill.
Present.
Lars Schonberger.
Here.
Mary Beaton.
Here.
Mary Rees. Mary Rees. She's here. I see her looking at the screen.
Yeah.
That's all. Linda, you have no audio.
Test.
Hi, Dean.
Can you hear me?
I didn't know if I was starting the meeting and turning over the baton, so to speak. I didn't know. Okay. And I wasn't going to say a word other than I just thought I had confused. I wasn't, yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I just don't get that much. Yeah, no problem. I'm just going to close down on this. No point in being in the audience. I know, but what's the point? I mean, there really isn't a point. I mean, that's fine. I just wasn't intending to participate. I just didn't know that. Okay, that's okay. That's okay. No, I did recuse myself, and I was intending to, like, say, ex parte communication, or recuse myself. That's what I thought when I looked at the agenda. Because that's not how we've normally done it in the past. Okay, that's fine. It's no big deal. Don't have anything to say. Yeah, fine. It's all good.
Robbie,
Who is
Robbie,
Oh,
Robbie.
Robbie stepped away.
Yes.
Robbie.
I'm not participating. I'm recusing myself due to ex parte communication. So there's really nothing more I can say about it.
Okay, you can listen. All right, can everybody hear me now? Larry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I've done stuff and I don't know that y'all heard me. I called the roll. Everybody called the roll. I read the appeal procedure, but the approval of the minutes is next on the agenda. Do I hear a motion to accept the February 6th, 2020 minutes?
Motion to approve as presented.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
Who? Laura?
That was me, Laura.
Okay, the public comments is available. Anyway, like to call case HPV 20-04, request for certificate appropriateness for exterior painting, faux windows, decorative awnings, fencing, and landscaping. Tim, would you like to present your?
This is Dean Mims. I'm staff to the board, interim planning director. I do have a PowerPoint ready, and I have been in contact with the applicant, Mr. Green, and I believe he just wants to be available, for questions at appropriate times as they come up. But I don't believe he has a presentation per se, but I do have a PowerPoint ready.
Okay, all right. Then has everybody read the presentation that he's asking for? Does the board have any questions or any statements that they want to make about it?
Madam Chair, if I may, I was just I thought it might be wise for me to present the PowerPoint.
Okay, sure.
And I think, could take questions during it or afterwards. It's really the pleasure of the chair and the board, but that's what I was anticipating.
That's fine. This is new for me doing this way, and
Okay.
so that sounds great. Thank
So
you.
this will be my first Zoom PowerPoint. I'm going to go to share screen and we'll let her rip here. It's not real long. I'll try not and completely tie up your afternoon here. Hopefully I'll cover the material.
Okay.
And,
Linda, Mr. Green had his hand up while Dean
Okay.
was speaking.
All right.
So I don't know if he had a question prior to the PowerPoint.
Thank you. It wasn't a question on PowerPoint. I was getting a document from my wife and just sort of waving to her there.
Oh, okay.
I did want to know, I'm sort of the stranger of the group here, and I don't live in Palatka. Would it be okay just to give a quick 2-minute bio of who I am, just so that people can sort of understand my background?
That should be appropriate. I think they'd like to hear from you.
Okay. For sake of time, I wrote it down so I'm not stumbling over my words. But anyways, I wanted to say first off, thank you to everybody in the Historic Preservation Board for showing up on short notice and hearing my case. My name is Tim Green. I'm the owner of the property at 114 South 3rd Street, formerly the Elks Lodge. My professional background is in the area of biology, business banking, and currently art and antiques. My background in biology is lifelong. I camped and hiked throughout my life in the Appalachians. In the early 1990s, I turned that into a career. I became the senior aviculturist for Walt Disney World for 3 years, caring and breeding endangered birds. And I worked alongside with John Brugan, for those who are familiar with the St. Augustine Alligator Farm. He's the director. My career at Disney opened up the opportunity for me to work in South America. where I became the manager and lead naturalist for an eco tour company. I worked there for about 4 years in the Amazon. Some of the highlights of my biology degree: I was the first in the world to breed 2 endangered species of birds in captivity. I discovered a new species of frog, and I wrote the conservation plan, which the town of Contamana in Peru used for their preservation, the nature preserve they set up. And when I returned to the US, I did so after I was married. I worked for SunTrust Bank. I took an entry-level position. Within a year, they promoted me to a sales coach with a staff of roughly 40 employees. In the next 3 years, I was recognized 6 times as their top sales coach in the entire corporation. It earned me quite a few promotions. And when I moved to West Palm Beach, I took a position on Palm Beach Island with Citibank as an assistant vice president of their business banking department. So that opportunity granted me great exposure with some of the best business people in the world. So during the recession, the bank position was eliminated. I was a victim of that recession, lost my home. But instead of taking unemployment, I started my own business buying and selling art and antiques. And I've done that for roughly 10 years. And in that 10 years, I've gained some recognition with Lark Mason, who, if you watch PBS Antique Roadshow, he's a specialist in Asian art. Sell through auction houses with Sotheby's and Christie's. And to date, I've sold a piece that achieved $2.2 million sale amount. So I've had some success with that. So these days, I live at home in Interlaken. I take care of a very large extended family, and I enjoy traveling with my wife and shopping for antiques. So hope that gives a little bit of my background. And with that, I welcome your questions and comments about my application.
We'll wait until we see the PowerPoint, and then if the members have questions, then.
I'm trying to get to the screen share. Hold on a second.
Okay, thank you.
Hold on. I think I'm going to enlist a little bit of Millennium support here for just a second.
Okay.
Maybe can I just pull it up? Hold on. Millennium support. Thank you. Yeah. I hit the wrong button. So.
Is this connected?
Yeah, we're in. I haven't gone out. So that's it. I did hit share screen.
Yes.
We're good. Can everybody see the screen? Do you see a PowerPoint slide?
I do, yes. Do you, Larry? Tim?
Yes.
Laura? Mary?
All righty. Well, again, I appreciate the introduction from Mr. Green. We've really only spoken on the phone or exchanged emails, and it's good to see a face. And this is what the inside of City Hall looks like for those of you who haven't been here for a while. We've completely redone it under the new management, and I'm just kidding. The background is fun for me. This is the Historic Preservation Board meeting, August 25th. The item before us, other than the approval of the minutes before, is a certificate of appropriateness. It's the 4th for this year that right, Norman here, for 114 South 3rd Street. It's in the South Historic District. The applicant is Mr. Timothy and Ms. Araceli Green. It has 5 components: exterior painting of the existing 2-story building. That's the old Elks Lodge building. Addition of faux windows to the 1-story building, a 1970s extension to the circa 1940 Elks Lodge building. Decorative awnings on the 1-story building, and proposed fencing of 8 feet in height, wood to be painted white for most of the property, and some landscaping in the front yard. The property, it's nice to be in a town where people really know their way around so well. It's a well-known property. The Elks Lodge fronts on 3rd Street, secondary frontages on Oak Street, and that's the property is highlighted in tan. I was pleased to put this map up. This is a map of our historic districts, and the arrow points to the location. It's right at the north end of the South Historic District, west side of 3rd Street, north side of Oak Street, and it's the mid-block south of, on the south side of St. John's Avenue, does not front on St. John's Avenue. It is a, yeah. So I wish to thank our board member, Larry Beaton, for sending me, digging up the Sanborn's map. And I'd like to make a correction in the report. I had thought this was because the map was a 1930 Sanborn map, that the Elks home, dead mid-block on the bottom there at 114, same address. That was a paste in as Sanborn Insurance corrected its maps over time, updated its maps, they would paste in the newer building. So I believe the update was in 41, but it shows the 1940 building. And the property appraiser had this one right. So I was pleased to see that. And that's just let that report stand corrected. So moving on. We have Florida master site files for properties in the district. For some reason, we did not have the printed form for the Elks Lodge, but there are some pictures. The pictures are much more recent than the 1983-84 date of establishment of the district. But this is a 2009 image that is in there, and that was the building then and used by the Elks Lodge, and give you an idea of this 1940 era building. There's some Art Deco components. Mr. Green has put forth that there may be some prairie components too. That's the building. And on the left side, which is the south side, you can see the one-story extension, part of the one-story extension, the plain facade. The only component of the Elks Lodge building that's before us today really is the repainting of it, matching colors on the wall. So more about that. Immediately south, adjacent to the Elks Lodge building, is this, what we keep referring to it as the one-story building for obvious reasons. Build date in the 1970s, a not particularly interesting building. And the picture at the top of your screen, prior to the added elements, that was provided by the applicant. Applicant provided us, so there's really, what you see is you see a plain facade. You see, I did notice, and carefully looking at this, there is an awning over the door that is no longer there. So that's a difference. And you go to the lower picture, I happen to have taken that picture on May 19th. The applicant had a virtually identical picture in his application. And it shows, work that has been done. And I believe, I understand by the applicant, but at any rate, new property owner didn't really, have the benefit of knowing his way completely around, or, we kind of came upon this, and that's when Mr. Green and I got to know each other. And the conversation just started over, yes, you need a certificate of appropriateness for really almost anything exterior in the historic district, and some things would need to go to a hearing. And when I saw these, when I observed this in February, my first thought is, my first observation was that fenestration had been added. These are real windows. And I thought, oh my God, we even have a building code issue here. Researched this later, spoke at length with, spoke with the assistant building official. The faux windows did not involve wall penetration other than just fastening them. So there's not a building permit issue there. The metal awning, attractive metal awning over them also does not require a building permit. So the differences that I see here from what was and what is there's an awning that's been removed over the door, awnings that have been added over the new windows that have been added, landscaping added, and paint. So we'll go on from there. And you can see on the left side that tall fence posts were put in. Those are approximately 10 feet tall in anticipation of an 8-foot tall fence. What you can't see in the foreground is part of that fence, the 8-foot tall fence. And it is, I find it very attractive. It has been installed. The read from the building department is, we'll stay out of the building permit aspect of it. Let's just stick with historic preservation. But that's in place, and staff has no issues with that from a historic preservation standpoint. Moving on, applicant put this good graphic together. The proposed fence plan for the open lot with the Oak Street frontage. The red the proposed fencing. I don't know if you can see my arrow on the screen. You should be able to, pointing to it. So it goes up very near the left property line there. Well, that actually is the property line. And it's 8 feet here, 8 feet down here. And you'll hear more about this from me later. This 23 foot 5 inch run is the section of concern and recommendation from staff to change the height of that. And then the fence also is proposed to go back up this side, the existing driveway, cut into here, go along the 2-story apartment building. I believe it's 2 stories at 118 through, oops, let me go back. Hold on. And then track down to here. And this is the posts that you saw in the picture were here. The existing fences here, I find attractive and of no consequence, but it's, it's part of the package of what's proposed, even though that little piece is in place. And so that's the fence proposal, and briefly, and I think it's a helpful graphic, and I do appreciate it. There's also a double fence gate component to it. I'm presuming it's of the same horizontal design. Moving down, also helpful images provided by the applicant. You see the current view, the upper one, the fence posts were installed. This was a call. Somebody I was contacting, said, could you please come take a look at this? I did. Said, okay, what's going on? And then this is the proposed look of the 8-foot fence. And so we'll get back to that. The applicant's goal is laudable. It's stated in there. The goal of the application is to offer a proposal that can serve the needs of a commercial property while creating and retaining a friendly neighborhood appearance that blends with surrounding properties. And I want to correct my staff report. I had an error of commission in the report in this area. It was from a previous report. When I was reading it today, I was going, wait a minute, house? There's no house here. So consider that stricken from the staff report. I'm surprised nobody caught me on it, but that's okay. So, but this is the stated goal. It is fine. Staff review. I've gone through the different components in the staff report. It was sort of briefly done here. The 2-story building to match, the light yellow to match the existing. Mr. Green is color matched it. He's taking care of that. That went an email he sent this morning that I passed on to you all. And then white trim and gray stairwell. No issues at all. These are typical colors, compatible with the district, fully acceptable. The 1-story building, it took some research on my part for me to understand that color is just fine. Although it may not look like a lot of what you're used to seeing in the historic district, it is one of the colors that I show in a later picture here is from the historic color palette, and the others from the related timeless palette of Sherwin-Williams. I got these a week or two ago from the Sherwin-Williams store in South. Owner was very gracious, spent some time with me, and I said, this is the situation. And I went straight on over to the property and just put them up against the wall and took a picture. And I think it's spot on. Those are acceptable colors. And also a board member was gracious enough to loan me a 1930s page from the Saturday Evening Post. And it's in the staff report. And it shows colors that really look, very compatible. Quite a few greens in there, really. So Mr. Green's green is spot on. So here you go. And this is, digital camera in full daylight, and then downloaded, copied, but they're quite close and definitely within the same range. So staff fully, had no question once I did my research on this, that this, staff's recommending this as part of the COA. More in staff review. The faux windows and decorative awnings may be a bit difficult to say with absolute certainty what that style is, but I think Mr. Green has put something that's aesthetically pleasing, an improvement over what's there, and I think it can be, successfully argued that it blends with the styles of the certainly of the adjacent building. It's not incompatible with the district. I'd say it's harmonious with the attached 2-story building as well. compatible nearby properties, adjacent properties, particularly within the commercial area of the South Historic District, which is, it's a pretty limited area, but it's in the downtown riverfront district. And although much of the South Historic District is residential, and that is to the south of here, but not this property. Staff finds this compatible, these changes. That's for the board's consideration, but I'm supporting the applicant's what he's got here. I have made a suggestion, and it's not a recommendation per se. It's just a suggestion that the applicant may wish to consider replacing the previously existing awning above the door with an awning similar to the above faux windows. I think it would work in terms of the rhythm of the facade, the look. I also think it would provide weather protection. So it'd be a practical measure for people entering and leaving the building. Landscaping, no historic issues there, commendable addition. Now, the wooden fence, I think that's considered, Mr. Green considers that that's a critical component. This is one we've discussed. It is 8 feet high, and as I mentioned, it's to surround much of the area of the property, particularly extending to Oak Street. I find it's an attractive horizontal plank design. I did show some pictures from the 1950s from a book they're similar. And I think it's a nice design, fully compatible with incorporating prairie style Art Deco design principles. And looks fine as wood, and he's proposing it as white, no issues from staff's perspective. But one component I do believe needs revision. Along the frontage along Oak Street, that is a pedestrian area in your historic district. It's just 1 block south of the commercial district. And it's not what most places would allow. Our fence regulations are pretty thin. I've only have them in residential areas, and much the South District. So it's basically in the front yard, it's 4 feet. And then beyond that, behind the front line of the building, it's 6 feet, but that's residential, that's the code. I do think it's within your purview to review this, regardless, it is part of the district. And so I find that I've tried to make the case that it is excessive, and a few considerations. It is, although it's secondary frontage, and it's not quite an arbitrary designation. It's a fairly large parcel, and it is a street frontage. People do walk, and as Palatka becomes more lively, there'll be more people walking. So I think it's desirable to have an inviting pedestrian environment. And even though this is not a very long section, it's quite the visual barrier. I mean, it's 6 feet's a visual barrier. 8 feet is a statement. And I think it's the opposite of what properties fronting public streets in a walkable historic district or any walkable district should have. And as I mentioned before, it would be limited to 4 feet in the front yard if it were in a residential area. Privacy fences tend, in my experience, and I've been at this for decades, typically 6 feet in height and not 8 feet. Common standard is for non-privacy fences to be 4 or 5 feet. That defines a boundary. It's a visual barrier. It's a psychological barrier. Mr. Green is concerned for future businesses' interests and what he envisions, that he wants it really tall. But I think he could accomplish that with a step down too. And I'm, sensitive to his well verbalized concerns to, I say, a maximum of 5 feet. That's still a considerable barrier. I'd prefer 4, but there it is. And so we can go on from there. That is really the difference between what he's proposing and what your staff is recommending. So the specific recommendation, I can save this. This is an exact repetition of what is in the final recommendation on this. So let's move on. Staff recommends that the board issue a certificate of appropriateness for this case. 114 South 3rd Street for the following: exterior painting with colors as proposed for the 2-story building with the existing paint color for the 1-story building. In other words, the 1-story addition. faux windows, one-story building as installed, decorative awnings as installed. Those are metal awnings, by the way. They're kind of bronze in color, amber in color. Landscaping as proposed. And then again, back to the specific recommendation on the fencing. The fencing around the property, fine, with the following change, the applicant's proposal. And this would be change, most of it is fine at 8 feet, but change the 8 feet height to a maximum of 5 feet for the section, this is in A, of fence parallel to Oak Street. Recommended transition along the side property lines, they're perpendicular to that, would be by incrementally stepping down, steps from 8 feet to 7 feet to 6 feet to 5, et cetera, and to the 23.5-foot span that faces Oak Street. Acceptable alternative would be a gradually sloping straight line rather than incremental steps. That's your staff recommendation. I put all this up because it is important. It's in the code. The board is tasked with making findings by the code required by in this historic preservation section 5479B. One, in the case of proposed alteration or addition and to an existing structure, such alteration addition will not materially impair the architectural or historic value of the structure. In case of proposed new structure, the fence, such structure will not in itself or by reason of its location on the site materially impair the architectural or historic value of a structure on the adjacent site or in the immediate vicinity. And in the case of proposed new structure, such structure will not be injurious to the general visual character of the district in which it is located. If I were a board member, I would pay particular attention to the third one if in fact you're going to go with my recommendation or something like it with some sort of revision to the fence, because I think that is really the point. I think it's the right thing to do to step it down at that street frontage. I think that would work for the applicant's concerns, and I think it would work for the district. So that ends my presentation, and I do believe, and I'm certainly here with you till the end for any questions you may have. Thank you.
I see that we have some citizens that have logged on, or do they have any comments? Can they hear me? Should I click this one? Yeah.
Madam Chair, I had a few questions. Do you have some citizens that wish to comment?
It says here, but we're asking them to unmute,
Oh, okay.
and they don't seem to be, I don't know whether they're not listening or. They need to be just listening.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you
We
say
don't have any. This is Code Officer Jackson with the City of Palaka. No questions.
No. Thank you very much. Larry, do you want to go ahead and ask your questions?
Sure. Could I direct a question to Mr. Mims? Were notices sent out to the adjacent property owners, and was there any response from the property owners on either side on Oak Street, either the one on the house that sits on the corner or the commercial property that's to the west of this property? Mr. Mims, you're muted.
Am I unmuted now?
Yes, sir.
Good. Yes, notices were sent out per code. 150 feet, I think it was, I believe 15 days in advance. We advertised in the newspapers similarly as we had to for a specially called meeting. It wasn't a normal date. And we posted the property both on the 3rd Street frontage and the Oak Street frontage.
Okay. All right.
And,
Thank you.
and the rest of your question, I've gotten not one call.
Okay. Okay. Very
Nothing in
good.
writing. We've received nothing to the best of my knowledge.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Madam Chair, could I direct a question to Mr. Green?
Yes, go ahead, Larry.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Green, I was just, as you know, the property that extends, the portion of the property that extends to Oak Street is rather irregular in shape. And I was curious if there was if you had thought about the possibility. I'm assuming that the fence is actually going up on the property lines and or fairly close to the property line. And my question is, because of the irregular shape, had you considered the possibility of maybe setting the fence back a little bit on your property and doing some additional landscaping on the Oak Street side in front of the fence?
Thank you for the question. Let me start by saying that before I set any of the posts, I spoke to the property owners. Mr. Miller, Tate Miller, owns the residential property on the corner, and I can't remember Michael's last name, but he owns the 306 Oak Street. So the property lines that I laid the post on were mutually agreed to by my adjacent neighbors. And part of the reasoning for the setbacks that we chose was that I was concerned about, with regards to Tate Miller's property, I was concerned about encroaching on the parking driveway that his tenants partly use. And I didn't want to come onto the property, make it difficult for his tenants to park. And so he and I discussed in great length where a safe mark was. So those particular lines were drawn that way. And that actually is the reason why I did not enclose more of the driveway, so that we wouldn't further impede any of his tenants. Regarding to the 306 Oak Street side, we spoke in length about the property line, the property owner and I. He encouraged that rather than creating sort of a dead space between his 9-foot wall and the back part of his property that's drawn in yellow, that I run my fence and attach it directly to the wall. And the approximate 3-foot spacing was based upon the fact that neither of us knew exactly whose palm trees those were. Those are the 3 black dots there. And we didn't want to encroach on their root system. So I wanted to maximize as much space enclosed in my fenced area without creating a problem for those palm trees. And then with regards to my placement of the fencing that's parallel to Oak Street, I wanted to make sure that the 306 Oak Street had enough view, if there's a driveway that's just to the left of those palm trees, that they had enough view that I wasn't creating a blind drive. So that's how we sort of came up with lines. And that was, again, in agreement with my adjacent property owners. And with respect to your question about landscaping, all of the fence will be fully landscaped. So my intention is to grow flowering, vining plants, native species if I can. That will not only improve the aesthetic of the area, but also attract some of the local fauna. And then the green area, the lawn space in front of, which is approximately 11 feet, 12 feet between the fence and the sidewalk, all of that is going to be heavily planted with flowering trees, again, with a preference towards native species and species that are prone to attract local fauna.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And are you amenable to staff's suggestion about reducing the fence height?
So, so let me explain how I came up with the 8-foot height, and maybe you can understand my concern for reducing the height down to 5 feet. At this point in time, the property has been used as a restaurant, and it's really our intention to do so again. But unfortunately, with this COVID, we just don't know. Okay, so at this point, I can't make any firm commitment as to how the property will be used. That said, I do want that area to be secure, whether it's a piece of expensive equipment or artwork in my building, and having a fence as a deterrent is going to be, I feel, important to future use of the building. Now, as far as the 8-foot goes, the 8-foot fence, again, adjacent from, let's say, the 3rd Street section that runs sort of parallel to Oak Street, but behind the 118 South 3rd Street property. The height of that is really to provide as much privacy to the tenants who live there 24 hours a day. So having a restaurant or whatever activity that might run into 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock in the evening, I think that 8-foot height gives a lot of privacy. And those tenants have been using that property since I've put up the fence, and they like it because it allows them to socialize. And
I think we may have lost Mr. Green.
Checking to see.
While we're waiting, Linda, it looks like that Elizabeth Van Rensburg has joined us.
Yes, I just noticed that Sunny just mentioned that she had joined. So I don't know how to bring her up. This is all too technical.
I'm back. There I am.
There you
Very
go.
good.
All right.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does
All
anybody-
right. So going back in terms of the height of the 8 feet, the narrowness of any space to do any adequate landscaping to provide additional privacy just doesn't exist on the border with that particular property.
You're not on.
I'm not on?
Yes, you're on.
Yes, you're
Oh.
on.
I am. Okay. My technician is helping me out in the background there the best you can. All right. So that was the reason for the 8-foot fence. Now, when you get closer to the Oak Street side, there's a slight grade to the property. So in other words, and the intention of the fence is to stagger it down so it never goes above 8 feet. But one of the ideas that we have for using that is to put a decking area on the interior of the fence to use for outdoor seating, let's say restaurant seating or a function or whatnot. In order to keep it level with what is roughly 25 feet further in, we're going to have a grade of about a foot and a half. So if you're at a 5-foot fence at the closest point to the sidewalk, if the levelness of the interior decking reduces the interior height of the fence to, let's say, 4 feet, it doesn't really offer a lot of privacy for someone who, let's say, wants to have a private meeting in an outdoor setting on that. So a 6-foot fence would give you about 5-foot privacy, an 8-foot fence, maybe 6 to 7 feet. And in terms of the differences for me, again, maybe a 6-foot fence would work if I have the time to cultivate some thicker hedging and privacy and so forth. But my gut feeling tells me that once I landscape that section of the fence, you won't even see it from the sidewalk. So in terms of the visual impact of, let's say, 6 feet or 8 feet or 7 feet, hopefully it'll be well disguised by some beautiful landscaping. But 5 feet seems to me an easy enough height for someone to jump over the fence and perhaps take some equipment or supplies or just trespass. And I have concerns about that.
I would like to turn the gavel over to Larry because I have a question and I think maybe that's appropriate to do. Larry, would you accept that?
Okay.
Question?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
I'll take your virtual gavel.
Okay, thank you. There you go. Mr. Green, something came up in my mind as I read this and wondered if you did the 5 foot on just that portion there, that you could not make it 8 feet by adding like a lattice to make up the difference. It would make it airy. Yes, you could see in it, but at least it still would give you the privacy and people not climbing over it. It would still give you 8 feet, but openness. And I don't know whether that's something that the board would consider or you would consider.
Thank you. Actually, that was something that it came up in discussion and speaking with Mr. Mims. And I kind of felt it's easier to make an 8 foot fence into a 5 foot fence than it is to turn a 5 foot fence into an 8 foot fence. Yeah, you could probably put some trellising on there, but it's going to look after the fact. And the cost of the fence is not small. It's a pretty expensive design because it's finished on the inside and the outside. And I'm not objecting to the idea that if visually 8 feet, once it's landscaped, is still doesn't carry the right aesthetic. I'm very in tune with the aesthetics of how it turns out. But again, it's not impossible. I just haven't invested the time to try and figure out a way of making the lattice look. I mean, if you're talking about sort of the crisscrossy lattice, it just doesn't speak of the sort of Art Deco design of the property. And so it's going to take a whole nother concept to make that design work.
Does anybody else have any comments about that? Laura, Mary? Elizabeth?
I'll return the gavel to you, Linda.
Okay, thank you. Anyway.
Okay, Linda, I did have one other question, and I'm not sure if Mr. Mims or Mr. Green could answer this for me, but the single-story building that that's part of this proposal that we're talking about approving as part of this motion, are those windows and awnings actually going to be visible from the Oak Street side if you go with either a 6 foot or an 8 foot fence?
I can answer that. The windows, the faux windows that's in the proposal face only 3rd Street. There are no proposed windows facing Oak Street.
Okay, are they going to be visible because of the fence from if you were walking along or driving along Oak Street? Are you actually going to be able to see them because of the fence?
Okay, no, but you can't see them without the fence. You can't see the front of the 1-story addition from Oak Street.
Okay. So I guess the only reason I'm making that point, I'm not sure that the modifications that you've made to the 1-story building are as significant as what's actually visible from the Oak Street side, which I'm assuming is primarily the side that we're kind of focusing on for this discussion. So I'm not sure that some of those issues are as critical as the fencing and the landscaping that's going to be visible for pedestrians and vehicular traffic on Oak Street. Am I reaching the correct assumption?
I think you are, and I'll add that that open area of the property has historically, well, I shouldn't even use the term historically. Let's say since the property was used for restaurant purposes, it's been used like a parking lot. And I don't think that the manner of parking cars in a dirt and grass lawn adds to the aesthetic to the historic district either. So yes, I would concur with what you're saying.
Okay, all right, thank you. Well, I guess, Madam Chair, I guess in conclusion about my comments, I would like to see a lower fence and perhaps Mr. Green looking at some additional security measures like cameras or something inside. Mr. Green, since you haven't dealt with us before, hopefully you're picking up on the theme that we try to work with the applicant as much as possible to come to a resolution rather than just doing a yay or a nay on these resolutions, because we certainly appreciate you becoming a property owner in the city of Palatka, number one, and number two, you spending the money to make this site look better than it currently looked. So we applaud your efforts, and we don't want to discourage you from what you're doing. We just want to make sure that it's going to be suitable for the historic district, since it falls within the South Historic District of Palatka, and that people who are traveling through the neighborhood, maybe looking at other residences or some of the churches that are in the area, whatever, that it blends in with that look and it doesn't stick out, I guess would be like a sore thumb, that it's not something that doesn't blend in. So I would be more comfortable with a lower fence, but I just don't know how the other board members feel. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Larry. Any comments from any of the other members? Do you have a preference for it being 8 foot or lowering it to 5 feet? Mary? No? Oh, just a minute. Okay.
I'm a little slow at this stuff. I agree with Larry's comments. Hopefully this will be agreeable with Mr. Green. An 8 foot high fence just seems so isolating to me, especially when it's down in the historic district. I just don't think it's appropriate. Hopefully between landscaping or whatever, that a lower fence would still be able to adequately solve his issues as well as aesthetically look nice down in that area. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mary. What about you, Laura?
Well, I'm thinking that with the landscaping, that will solve the problem of it being slightly lower than the 8 feet.
Any other discussions or comments? Do I hear a motion toward one way or the other?
I just figured out how to unmute myself, and I agree with what everyone is saying.
Oh, thank you, Elizabeth. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to forget you, but I don't have a picture of you up, so.
So, Madam Chair, could I direct a question to Mr. Mims?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Mims, so I'm not sure that Mr. Green has totally bought into our idea of a lower fence. So how would you like to proceed with this motion? I certainly, as a single board member, I certainly would not like to see the motion fail because of the fence, but maybe Mr. Green wants to make some additional comment that he would be receptive to a lower fence, or if not, maybe we could break this out that we would approve everything except for the fencing, and then you try to negotiate with him about how to proceed with that. I mean, I know he doesn't want to have a second hearing just for the fence, and I know you don't either, and probably the rest of the board doesn't want to do that either. So I guess I'm throwing myself on the good graces of the applicant to see if he would be receptive to a slightly lower fence than what he's initially proposed.
So if you don't mind, let me chime in before Dean makes a statement. I'll accept a proposal as you have it, where it is 8 foot except for the frontage on the Oak Street. once I plant the area and you see to the degree of what I hope to landscape it, I would like the opportunity. There are other changes down the road I hope to make to improve the property that will bring me in front of the board. That at least at that time, you'll see the changes, and whether it was a 5-foot fence or 8-foot fence will do nothing to change the beautiful aesthetic that the passerbyers will see from the street.
Thank you, Mr. Green. I appreciate your comments. Mr. Mims? Unmute.
You're muted. There you go.
I'm not, I'm in. I was buying myself a second. From what I've heard, Mr. Green is accepting the staff recommendation, but I would need to know, it's not clear to me what the board's recommendation is. And if there were any, staff will need very clear guidance from the board. You could make a motion that might set some parameters, but in terms of just leaving it to staff to negotiate, I don't think that's a good place for the board or for me to be.
Right.
I'd like to suggest we make a motion, and if you want to put in that motion an acceptance that he possibly comes back later with, showing what it might look like after he's done the landscaping.
Okay, let me try to craft a motion and see if I can get a second for discussion. So I move that the board accept staff recommendations as presented, and that the portion of the fencing on the Oak Street side be reduced to, Mr. Mims, it was 6 feet was your recommendation. Is that right? 5 feet? 5 feet. Okay, and that the portion.
If I may, 5 feet max.
Oh, 5 feet max. Okay.
Would allow it to go lower.
Okay, and that with the exception that the recommendation is that the portion of the fencing that is along the Oak Street side not exceed 5 feet.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, Laura, second. You got to turn your mute off, Mary. So I have a motion. Okay, Ms. Mims?
Clarification. I didn't specify, my recommendation was for a step down to get down to the 5 feet. I haven't heard Mr. Green. I think it might be interesting to hear what Mr. Green has to say about that. I recommended steps, for example, foot by foot steps, or perhaps even just a straight, clean Art Moderne line, if you will, or Art Deco line.
Mr. Green?
Thank you. Yeah, I was reading that, but I thought that was, again, sort of a recommendation. I didn't know that was part. I mean, again, the wording is semantics. It wasn't my consideration to reduce the side that borders my neighbors, both because I had both property owners agree to an 8-foot height, and that I feel that 8-foot height provides significant privacy to the one property that's residential and the second property, which is used as a charitable boutique. So no, that wasn't in my consideration. I wanted to retain the 8-foot height for the other sides. Now, as far as whether it's a straight line or not, I just think from the design standpoint, it's that because they're horizontal planks, to keep it 8 feet or lower, it's just a matter of removing the top plank. And that's a lot easier to maintain that Art Deco horizontal design rather than trying to sort of slope it down to 5 feet.
Larry, I want to hand it back over to you for a minute, so I have a comment. Mr. Green? I'm just wondering if you have the fence at 8 feet this way, and then you need a shorter fence this way, isn't that going to be kind of a sharp change? That's why my vision was to either have it step down so that it looks like it was meant to be, or to put the lattice work or something so that you wouldn't have that sharp break from 8 feet down and then 5 feet across.
Oh, thank you. Actually, then I agree with you. If you're suggesting is for me to retain the appearance of an 8-foot height, that the frontage of the fence be kept to 5 feet, and then the 3-foot difference be made up of trellis, I'm agreeable to that.
Mr. Mims, how do you feel about that?
Understand that. I thought the clear recommendation from staff and in the motion was to have the 5 feet be 5 feet maximum along the front. No trellis, it's 5 feet.
Okay.
I mean, it really should be, well, it's 5 feet. And then to make the transition from the perpendicular 8 feet, not just abrupt right there, but to step up from the 5 feet at I didn't try to specify the horizontal run of that, if you would, of that transition. That was my recommendation. So if that's not the board recommendation, you'll need to restate it and state it clearly for everybody what the recommendation is.
Okay, well, let me go back. We had a motion. I guess we need to vote on that. Do you want to vote to accept that so that it would have the step, excuse me, the board recommendation of the step down or the slope and the 5 feet as Larry has made and Laura has seconded? Do I hear?
Do I need to clarify my motion and then my original motion was to accept staff recommendations for all the elements with the exception of the fencing, and that the fencing on the Oak Street side is not to exceed 5 feet. And then I guess I'll add to that there be a gradual reduction in the height of the fence from the other portions of the fence to achieve the 5 feet maximum on the Oak Street side. I know that sounds a little complicated, but I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Okay. Well, we had.
Hey, that's what I was trying to say. in my
I was trying to follow Robert's rule. We had the motion up one way, and I don't know whether if we vote no or on that and then restate another one the way you want to state it now.
I think that if I may, Madam Chair, I think the maker of the motion could withdraw the first motion and just pose the revise and just now he has a new motion.
All right.
Okay, so
I'm sorry to interrupt. I'd like to ask a question since we're going to draw another motion. Is that okay?
I also see our attorney shaking her head in the affirmative. Maybe we would like her to comment first before you comment again, Mr. Green. It's probably about my multiple motions.
Sounds good.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm afraid of. Yeah, thank you.
Exactly. In order to move forward, the initial motion would have to be withdrawn, and then you resubmit the second motion as a motion for consideration. You cannot have two motions on the floor.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. So, Madam Chair, I would like to withdraw my initial motion.
Okay.
And if that's accepted to withdraw that, I would like to reaffirm my second motion as stated, or if you need me to restate it, I can.
I think let's restate it just to.
Okay. All right. So my motion is to accept all the elements of the staff recommendations as presented in the staff report, with the exception of the fencing, and that the fencing that's being proposed on the Oak Street side is not to exceed 5 feet, and that is to be accomplished by a gradual reduction of the 8-foot fence from either side as it approaches the portion that is on the Oak Street side.
Now, do we have a second on that motion?
I second.
All right, Mary. All right. Do I have a vote? Larry?
I think Mr. Green had an additional comment, if that's appropriate, before we vote.
Thank you. I'm not sure I don't know that it's appropriate now that you've already got a second to the motion. What I was going to ask is if the board took into consideration that the property on Oak Street directly across from mine has a 6-foot chain link fence and 1.5 feet of barbed wire. And that is a commercial property. And I'm wondering whether they understand that by lowering the fence requirements, that let's say my property is used as a restaurant, that's the scenic view that people attending that restaurant sitting outside will enjoy. It's really not a Riverview scenic location.
Any? Okay, I don't know. Ms. Thomas, how would I proceed if anybody wanted to make a comment toward that?
Well,
Elizabeth, do you have a comment?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, as unsightly as it may or may not be, it really doesn't have anything to do with this meeting at this time. It seems to me it's something that it was done in the past, unfortunately, probably, but as such is also unfortunately kind of grandfathered in and really has nothing to do with this meeting, unless I'm incorrect.
You're correct, and it had other issues to be.
I haven't made a motion, sir. It sounds like you're making one. Well, I can't make one. If you had the ability to run a meeting, you'd know that I can. No, sir, I'll be coming back. I haven't passed the gavel though, so I can't make a motion. I'm just saying what we're talking about.
Was that a Zoom issue?
I think so, yes.
I think that was audio bleeding in from another Zoom conference.
Yeah, I was talking, yeah. So,
Okay. Madam Chair, I'd like to call for the question.
all right. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Okay, is that, Laura, did I hear an aye?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, that's it.
Aye.
Motion, Elizabeth, and you agree?
I agree. Mine was an aye.
Okay, good. I don't, so, all right, the motion's carried. So, Mr. Green, we'll try to work with you the best we can. I'm sure they'll do it because I think you certainly improved the property, and we look forward to having something there that will add to downtown Palatka.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have anything else on the agenda?
Nothing else on this agenda. It's time for, board member comments. I guess you could open up to any public comments. It's always good to get the public a chance to speak again. But I would just like to say that I would like you to mark your calendars for the regularly scheduled meeting next month. I do believe that we will have a regular item in the South Historic District before us next month.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mims. Does anybody else have any comments?
Just to apologize for being so horribly late. I was waiting for an email for a link and I'm new to this and I was panicking because I didn't have a way to link in, but it all got taken care of and apologies. I won't do it again.
We're glad you're able to join us. So,
Thank you.
all right. Well, a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, very good. Okay, Mr. Mims. You're on mute.
Before we all disappear, the actual Larry made the Mr. B made the motion, and I wasn't clear as to who seconded it. I imagine our
We've got it here.
Was it?
Sonny's been taking notes.
I know. I'm just as a backup. Who made the second?
Right. I believe Laura made the first.
Was it Laura?
And I think, Mary, you made the next one. Yeah, Mary made the one that we actually voted on.
The one that was approved, the final motion,
Yeah,
the
Mary Reese, yeah.
motion. There,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay.
Helpful.
Linda and Mr. Mims, I have a suggestion for the next meeting that might make things a little simpler. When we make motions and seconds, and when we have a vote, I think it would probably help everyone to, when you make a motion, say your name afterwards, and when you do a second, say your name, and then when we do a vote, have it as a roll call vote.
Okay.
That would just make it, because I've watched a couple of these other meetings, and we're not the only board that has problems with that because of Zoom conferences. But I think that would clarify things, and plus it would give staff a definitive answer about how each vote was registered.
Okay, thank you, Larry.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right, thank you all, and appreciate your participating in this and putting up with me not knowing how to do this. I thank Mr. Mims and Sonny for helping me out with this.
So nice to see our attorney online with us. We don't, for our meetings, a lot of times we wish we had the attorney present to help us with some issues. So yes, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes, I appreciate that too. You helped us with.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Thank you. So, all right. Okay.
You need to state that it's adjourned, Madam Chair.
Oh, the meeting is adjourned. I'm sorry.
All right.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.